Hi everyone, Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd. You know who it is, and it is time for a review of the new Black album, East Atlanta Love Letter. This is the second full-length commercial album from Atlanta-based songwriter and rapper Ricardo Valentine, aka Black, who suddenly turned up on people's radars back in 2016 with the major label backing of Interscope Records, landed a gold debut album with Free Black. However, I did not cover or talk about the album at great length because there was just so little on it that really grabbed my attention, stopped me in my tracks, as instrumentally and vocally the record felt pretty common and trendy for the current R&B field. It was still a starter album though, so I was hoping that future records would be a bit more bold and distinct, that Black would grow into his own just a little bit more and show exactly why he has the level of attention that he does. But unfortunately, excitement for Valentine's music still really eludes me. I understand if you're into this because you're really into the sound, you're really into the trend, you're really into the vibe to the point where you just can't get enough of it. Any record that sounds like this, you're pretty much sopping it up like gravy into a biscuit. You're eating the cereal, you're tipping the bowl, and drinking the milk. And I'm not even trying to dismiss the whole trend because over the years it has come out with some great records, it has come out with some pretty memorable and distinct artists. But this new album pretty much sounds like a faceless and bland blend of Weeknd, Drake, and Bryson Tiller. I could not tell you who made this album if you blindfolded me. On a blind taste test, I could not tell you who made this record. This thing is pretty much above average instrumentals topped with emotionally flat vocals, which for an album that is mostly led by singing, there's very little in the way of vocal range on this thing. And in terms of singing style, Valentine only sounds a shade or two less robotic than our boy Nav, who dropped an awful album earlier this year. Again, for an album mostly based on singing, there is very little singing on this record that's actually stunning or even passionate, despite Valentine's best efforts to work more personal effects into his lyrics, his entry into fatherhood. Occasionally, the songs on East Atlanta can be topically focused, like when Valentine is really on his Drake shit with the song Pretty Little Fears, a pretty dreary track about a failed relationship with J. Cole following topical suit in the second half. It feels like this story extends onto the song Disconnect 2, where Black sort of portrays himself and another person as just being two lovers who are at a romantic impasse, a disconnect. Miraculously, this song is actually my favorite on the entire record and features some of the most expressive singing on the entire project. The song Scripture seems to be all about Black's change in mood and worldview ever since seeing success in music, talking about his humble beginnings in music too, saying, "I wrote this in a hotel the size of a closet just to show you that I could do it, just to show you that it ain't much to it. If you got your hand out, don't be surprised when I look at you stupid. Where were you when it was me and the music?" But even in his most braggadocious moments on this song, the lyrics are rambly, the pacing is slow, and the sound overall is still pretty breezy. The song structurally is almost non-existent. Despite the fact that this song is kind of a big flex, I'm hearing very little worth flexing on. The final track, Stan, kind of flips the script on the obsessive fan trope, talking about falling in love with a fan and kind of vice versa, and likening his love for this person he has in mind to the infatuation levels of a stan. It's a fine closer, it has a cute little descending melody on the hook, but even with this track being one of the steamier songs on the entire record, overall it's just pretty mild. East Atlanta just feels like another album of spacey R&B wallpaper, because there is just so little about this record that pops out. I mean, it's listenable, there's absolutely nothing on this album that is overtly offensive, but there's very little on this thing in terms of memorability too, or excitement, or thrills. And I get that's not exactly this subgenre's MO, but it's not really all that sensual or intoxicating or sad either. It's just like this very gray, plain, even, constant sense of numbness. Right from the album's opening track, Unfair, which sounds like a soulless R&B robot trying to mimic human emotion over the same subterranean and cavernous tones that you've heard dozens of times on records just like this already. The following track, Loaded Gun, despite its kind of grim and dark title, leaves a lot to be desired in terms of mood and flavor. It's got some pretty tight and depressing production, I suppose, but again, the singing is shockingly underwhelming, especially in the second leg, where it's about as mundane as the lyrics themselves. I appreciate the grind he's trying to illustrate in that song. I appreciate some of the personal effects that he throws in there, but it's not put all that interestingly. And his very even and somewhat monotone delivery doesn't sweeten the deal either. I kind of like the heavy bass and the strings and the slow percussion and the drony distant pianos on the album's title track, but it's yet another moment on the album where the singing puts me into a bored stupor. And this track features Future on it, which I assumed going into it, he would kind of break things up, he would bring a little bit more of a change, but instead, Black and Future just kind of layer on top of each other for a little bit. Very little in the way of vocal chemistry. Their voices don't even sound good meshed on top of one another, but I guess at least it's not as comatose and blobby as the Khaled feature on the back end of the album. The song Let Her Go picks up the tempo of the album a little bit more, but without the overly moody and atmospheric production, I feel like the record inadvertently exposes just how generic it is, because everything from the vocal melody to the mid-paced trap beat is so nondescript that it's like this album is doing everything in its power to be as ordinary as possible. I pretty much feel the same way about the song Switch, also slightly more up-tempo in comparison with the other tracks here, though it does have a slightly chunkier and grimier beat. And why are Offset's vocals mixed almost twice as loud as Black's vocals on the track Balenciaga Challenge? He kind of sounds like a background singer on his own song. Again, very few tracks and moments on this record that I would say are boldly terrible or subpar, but with everything on this album just being so unbearably dime a dozen, the whole record just itches at the back of my psyche with just how painfully average the whole thing is. I could see other people enjoying this a lot more than me, considering just how much of this album's sounds are in vogue at the moment, but to my ears, there's really absolutely nothing on this album that puts Black anywhere near the top of this field right now, as it seems like this album's intent is more to just blend into the background of alternative R&B than it is to either innovate within it or even write genre-defining songs. Songs that say this is the sound and the representation and the cream of the crop when it comes to this time, this era, this musical movement. That's just not here. I'm feeling a strong 4 to a light 5 on this thing. Transition, have you given this album a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best, you're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like, please subscribe, and please don't cry. Hit the bell as well. Over here next to my head is another video that you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, music forever.